I did my share of community organizing for the past 20 some years in North Dakota and Minnesota. And part of my work was getting people out to vote. And through this process, it would help get people registered and help them get to the polls so they could vote. Was not partisan, didn't tell people who to vote for or what to do, just that they had that right as a United States citizen. In the United States, if you're a citizen, you have the right to vote. It's one of the privileges of being a citizen. Whether you're a naturalized citizen or a natural-born citizen, both citizens types can vote. However, if you're a natural-born citizen, you have a little more rights than the naturalized citizen. If you're a naturally born citizen in the United States, you can run for president. If you're a naturalized citizen, you can't run for president. Sorry, that's in the Constitution. I would have to change. But anyways, I did my share of voter registration and getting people to the polls. And what I learned through that process is that even though you have a right to vote, each state has requirements in order for you to vote. And one of the main requirements is that you have to have a residency. You actually have to have a physical residence that you live in, that you vote. And you have to live there a certain amount of time before the election. In Minnesota, it's 30 days before the election. You have to live at that address. North Dakota, it's 30 days. In California, it's only 14 days. So you have to live in a physical residence in California 14 days before the election. So then you're eligible to vote. Now, who can vote in California? You have to be a United States citizen and a resident of California. You have to be 18 years old or older on election day, and not currently in prison. And they have some other requirements about the whether you're a felon. Some felons can vote depending on what their felony was, and those sorts of things. Now, however, in California, they also have a requirement that says you cannot use a P.O. box as an address. Right here from the Secretary of State's page, from the frequently asked questions about voter registration, may I register to vote at my business address, or may I use a P.O. box number? And the Secretary of State says, no. A person may only register to vote at his or her place of residence. A business address or a P.O. box number may only be used as a mailing address. Now that's really important information, because I'm just about to tell you that Paloma for Trump boasts about how she voted for Trump. And you can go to her page and you can see information, her voter receipt and those sorts of things. And she talks about that got her involved in the politics the very first time. That's how she became Paloma for Trump. Now, we can find information out about people on the internet. I mean, there's so much information about you on the internet that, it's just easy to find. Your information goes out on your bills. It goes out every time you register for events. Your date of birth, you show. Every time you go to a bar and they card you, you show them your date of birth. You show them your address on your driver's license. All this information is put on the internet and is easily found. There's sites you can go to that you can research people. Employers do this all the time. So there's all this public information. And then there's private information like your medical records and really, really private stuff that shouldn't be out there. And then people, shouldn't be putting that information on the internet. But I've done my share of researching Paloma for Trump, because she always talks about how she lives in Tijuana. She says she's a dual citizen, and that's great. However, she talks where she lives is actually in Tijuana. And, that's concerning, because she actually, put her voter receipt up, that she actually was accepted for her registration. And she's very proud of it. And she says, thank you, President Donald J. Trump, for making politics for everyone. Now, she's just talking about that she could vote as a U.S. citizen and lives in Mexico. She talks about this quite a bit. If we actually go to one of her videos, just a recent video, she talks about this, talks about it openly.
Frustrated of that, and she kept saying that she had evidence but yet didn't. No, I don't live in America. I live in Mexico, and you guys have seen me waking up in Mexico for the last 8 months. I didn't just move to Mexico because of the caravans. I live in Mexico. I've lived in Mexico for 11 years. I travel a lot to LA. I'm in LA right now. I've traveled a lot to Florida. I travel a lot to Pennsylvania. I went to school not I don't travel a lot to Pennsylvania, but I travel sometimes to like back east. I went to school in New York City a long time ago, but I've lived in Tijuana without any interruption for the last 11 years. I moved to Tijuana in 2008. I believe it was July 2008.
Wow. Now, we have to think about that because she's talking about how she's lived in Tijuana for all these years. So how did she vote in the last election? Now, if you actually go to look up the information, you can go look up the information on the website in California. There's a voter registration verification page. And if you go to that and put the numbers in, put her name, address, date of birth, and zip code. Now, once again, your name, your address, your date of birth, your zip code. It's all information that can be found about you on the internet. You also show people this information continually. If you write checks, or if you're carded, or if someone wants to see your ID for whatever reason, entry to a business, entry into an event, you are showing this information and it's collected. You write it down on signature forms all the time if you sign petitions and things like that. Now, if we actually go to the voter registration verification, I'm going to actually block out some of this information because I had to find it. I had to look for it. And if you want to find it, go ahead and look it up yourself. And you can go to the site, lavote.net. Punch your information in and see if the voter registration verification comes up correctly. And when I do, it comes up voter registration verification, and it says it is active. The voter registration is active on Paloma for Trump. Well, that's interesting because, it's an address, but it's actually an address that is a P.O. box. If you look up her address and try to find her, there's an apartment building, big apartment building, but all those apartments, her address has a hyphenated number, and it doesn't match, 102, 103, 202, 34. It doesn't have a normal apartment number. It's a hyphenated number. And it starts out with the suite 2 dash, blah, blah, blah. So if you actually go and look at the address actually resolves to this address. Paloma for Trump's address she used for her voter registration is this place, which is PMB Private Mail Boxes. This is a place at the address that she lists on her voter registration as her residence, and it's STE2 dash blah blah blah. This is a PO box. This is not an actual address. You don't live in your P.O. box. You don't live in a P.O. box. You have to live at a physical address to establish your residency. Residency is the number one thing that we use in elections because we're a representative government. Each person that runs in Congress or locally in school boards, city council, all those things, they represent people that live in their district. That's why you actually have to have a physical residence in that district because you have people representing you. When you vote for president, you still pertains the same. You can't just live anywhere in the United States and go to another state and vote. You can't be in one precinct and go to another precinct and vote. So when you look at the address that Paloma's voter registration resolves to, it resolves to a P.O. box address. Makes you wonder. Voter fraud. Now, I'm just saying that the information I have, and I can plug it into the Secretary of State's site and come up with Paloma's actual verification that she's registered to vote. But when you dig deeper and look at the actual address that she uses, she doesn't live there. And remember, she just did a video talking about she's lived in Tijuana for over 11 years continually. So, it's interesting that it may be voter fraud, and her receipt was posted on her page. She's very proud of it, and no one's bothered to check where she really lives. So I submit to you that Paloma for Trump has potentially committed voter fraud. And what that means, it means two things. One, she could be potentially guilty of a crime if she was investigated with the same information. I'm not doing that, I'm just exposing it. And the second thing is that her vote should not have counted because it would be a spoiled ballot. It would be an invalid vote. Now, the Republicans and Democrats have been talking about voter fraud for a long time. The Republicans more than the Democrats. Seems like Democrats don't think it's a big deal. They want everybody to be able to vote. And when the Republicans have come up with legislation, federal legislation, Help America Vote Act, and other voting acts have been passed through legislatures to make it that people are verified that they qualify to vote. Now, we've heard Republicans accuse the Democrats that there's a lot of voter fraud on the Democrats' side, but I don't hear much about people saying Republican voter fraud, that the Republicans have gotten many votes because of voter fraud. I don't know. I haven't researched all that. I've just heard it on the news and I've heard people talk about it. But this specific example, in my opinion, shows that this person voted for Trump, and that vote shouldn't count because it's an invalid vote because she didn't establish residency in a proper actual residence in California. So I submit to you that Paloma for Trump is committing voter fraud. As I said earlier, every United States citizen has a right to vote, either if you're a naturalized citizen or a natural-born citizen. Well, both my wife Cindy, and I are natural-born citizens. We both were born in the United States, therefore we're a natural-born citizen. If you were born in Mexico and then you gain citizenship in the United States, you're a naturalized citizen. And again, the only difference between those two is that one more right happens with a natural-born citizen than a naturalized citizen. And that is that the natural-born citizen can run for president. A naturalized citizen can't.